Greetings and welcome to the Halloween edition of the Sliders Review. Alright, let's address the elephant in the room. I know it's not Halloween. Alright, that's long past. But when it came to my Halloween videos, I ran out of time and I couldn't upload everything I wanted to. So that's why I'm uploading them past Halloween. But if you stop and look at it like this, at some point in time, it's gonna be Halloween time again, October. So somebody eventually will stumble upon my videos and watch it around Halloween time. So yeah, and I'm here today to talk to you about Slasher Season 5 Ripper. So this is the latest season of Slasher, and it aired on Shudder. This used to be on Chillin' or Chili something like that network, and then it went to Netflix, and then it went to Shudder in its last 2 seasons. So far, the show has not been canceled and has not been renewed. And when it comes to the 5th season of Ripper, it's my least favorite season. I still stand by what I said. This is probably the best slasher horror television show ever. It's better than I Know What You Did Last Summer and Scream the television series. I like it so much better than American Horror Story. I just can't get into American Horror Story. But I really loved Slasher when I first watched it all those years ago. The first 2 seasons are extremely good. The 3rd season is really good. Although the 3rd season got on my nerve with all the politics they were talking about. Season 4, at that time, I did not like all that much. It had its moments, but there were just some things that irritated me. But now, after this season, Season 4 is a whole lot better than Season 5. Season 5 took me I don't know, it's just I couldn't really stay focused when watching this. It lost my interest big time. They decided to go back in time to I think it was the early 1900s, the 20th century or something like that. And it's set in Canada this time, because Season 3 was set in America. But yeah, it's a Canadian show and they kept talking about American politics. That just got on my nerves, man. And also, it took me a while to get vested in hey, what's this killer's angle and stuff like that. See, one of the reasons why this show in Season 4 and 5 is starting to get on my nerves is because it keeps repeating the same formula over and over again. Basically, there's a slasher and you have to figure out who the slasher is. Okay, typical, right? And I will say they do a great job in who these killers are, because I can never determine who they are until they take off their mask. So I like how that keeps me invested. But they keep repeating in the same formula of okay, something bad happened back in the past. So the show relies on a lot of flashbacks to determine what these people did that was so terrible and why a killer is going after them. I remember they started that in Season 2. I'm not really sure what all happened in Season 1. It's been a long time since Season 1. But I remember that as being just more of a person obsessed with somebody and stuff in Season 1. Whereas in Season 2, you had a large group of people and you had to determine, okay, what did all these people do to this one girl that was so terrible that would cause all these people to end up dead in the present? And that's kind of how this season is too. In fact, that's how this show has been since Season 2. It's just something terrible happened to this one person, or maybe 2 people, and then for whatever reason a killer goes on a killing spree to get revenge. And that's basically what this killer did. It's a take on Jack the Ripper, but this Ripper is a female of all things. And the costume looks really cool. And it's really eerie and scary, man. I really like it. And so, for whatever reason, this person is going on a killing spree because they want revenge. But why exactly? Now, one thing that took me a while to get into was at first, okay, this Ripper was avenging the death of a man that was hung. And he was framed for something he did not do. First, it started doing that for like the first episode two. So the first two episodes, right? Then it shifted focus. And it's like, okay, then it shifted on this one woman. This woman named Margaret, something happened to her 12 years ago that caused basically the entire cast of this show to do something really terrible to her. And so it was like, well, I thought it was supposed to focus on the murder of that man. But actually, she is the one who was murdered. And the man who was hung, he was framed. So it's like, oh, okay, I get that now. But like I said before, it took me it was so hard for me to get invested into this season because all the people that are responsible for, like, the torture, the sexual assault, and the murder of this woman, I just really didn't have no real interest in. The characters were just kind of like boring in my opinion. They weren't as interesting as characters in the past. I will say them constantly recycling the same actors and actresses are getting a bit old because that anthology mentality is kind of irritating at this point. Because like other anthologies, say like Goosebumps, yeah, they'll recycle their people too, but they also make sure they bring in plenty of new people that look different. So when I see these same people who play other characters in the past, it gets a bit like tiresome and stuff. I think shaking it up with a brand new cast would be good, but at that same time, it's gonna suck because the current people they have now are gonna lose their job. So it just is what it is. And so there's this one detective guy, Detective Kenneth. He is a all-around good cop who is desperately trying to find out like why the Ripper is doing what they're doing and trying to stop them, which leads him to realize that this is somehow tied into that Margaret woman. Now, some people have complained that this season is woke because why? Well, there's people of color being doctors and cops, and like, there's a Native American man, and then there's a drag queen in this, and then there's like a magician dude who's like gay and all this other stuff. And here's the thing, if you've ever watched this show and been a fan of it and you say it's woke, then you've never truly watched this show. It's always been diverse. This season, however, is the most diverse it's probably ever been. But this show has always delved in diversity and with people of color, women, different sexualities, and stuff like that. And some people saying that, a black cop and like a black doctor wouldn't be realistic back in those days. However, you have to remember something. This ain't America. This is Canada. Their segregation and diversity and slavery was a bit different than ours. Their slavery ended, I believe, way earlier than ours, and they started to like integrate people of color into like the job forces and stuff a whole lot sooner than we did. So it is very realistically for like a black doctor or a black cop around in like the early 1900s in Canada, because this is not America. So you have to keep that in mind. And so this cop dude, he's very diligent, and he it's difficult for this dude because like the superintendent dude, is it Isaac? I think his name is. He is a very dirty cop. And the dirty cop dude is constantly, I think he's sipping like morphine and everything and like all this other crap. You know how they were back in like those days. They was constantly chugging that stuff. And so so the superintendent is a very incompetent like cop. And so like the detective is the only person really trying to do like, his job. But he has an uphill battle. The corrupt cop and Basil. Basil is just a very wealthy man who controls a lot of stuff. He has his finger in everything. He has it in politics, the judge, like the cops, they pretty much do whatever he wants. And, So the detective dude, he's going piece by piece, trying to figure out how. Now, when it comes to this show, you gotta give it up to the way they kill people. It's very disgusting. Like there's so much blood and gore and body parts just falling out, and intestines coming out and limbs falling off. And I'll never forget season 2 when somebody was in like a bucket and the bucket was like acid or something like that. Boy, that was the most disgusting soup I ever seen. And there are people getting beheaded in this season. Somebody going through a printing press. Somebody having the flesh ripped off their body and having like words tattered on there. Like this show brings on the gore. Them Canadian people, I don't care how friendly they pretend to be. Oh, those some vicious people. And so, like a good cop in the 1900s, basically, every time you get a lead, you have to accuse somebody of something. So that's what he's constantly doing. Only problem is, every person he accuses of being the Ripper ends up dead. So it's really hard for him to figure out, who is the Ripper. And a lot of these characters are just terrible. You have the Bella Celli sisters, or however you say their name. They are very mean, stuck-up, aristocrat type women. They basically beat the crap out of their servants and stuff and just degrade them. And they're really rude to their sister, Adita, something like that, how you ever say her name? Like, they're just so mean and cruel. And one of the things that they did to that Margaret lady is that, they treated her like crap when she was sold to them to be like when she was their maid and stuff. So that's one reason why the Ripper is after them. And so, but the Ripper actually doesn't kill them. See, it's interesting. They're so mean to their sister that the sister framed the murder of one of the sisters and a magician trick gone wrong. And so because of that, the other sister got framed. And so they thought she was the Ripper. And so when the detective dude's like, look, man, I'll make you a deal. You rat this person out that you know is terrible and corrupt. And, the charges won't be pinned on you and stuff. She refuses to do that because of this, how powerful this one person is. So she's basically in jail and probably going to get sent to an insane asylum or something like that. The corrupt cop dude, he gets his because when it comes to that Margaret lady 12 years ago, see, they was all at a party and they pretty much treated her like crap. And so basically, he was actually in love with her. Because see, before she was a maid, a servant, she was a hooker and everything. And so he fell in love with her, but she didn't want him because he just grotesqued her and everything. So when she ended up murdered and he saw that murder happen, he basically just turned his head the other way and covered it up. And so so that's why the Ripper went after him. George is a swindler. Basically, he's a magician. He can do seances and stuff like that. He cheats people out of their money. And so he is on the Reaper's list because he hypnotized Margaret and made her cluck like a chicken on the floor. Everybody laughed at her, and that's when the crooked police officer made them stop because, he's in love with her and stuff. Then those two got into an altercation where he choked the crap out of her. It looked like she died, came back, and then he choked her again. As for the magician dude, they kept trying to pin the murders on him for the longest time, but he had an alibi. He was with another man who happens to be a pimp. And so I'm not sure how to pronounce this name, but it's Simone or something like that. He is the drag queen who is also a streetwalker and stuff. I'm not really 100% sure what he did to Margaret. I do remember when they were both streetwalkers and stuff, he stole one of her clients and everything. But I'm not sure exactly what he did to really piss the Ripper off and everything. But yeah, he gets it too. But he leads the detective into uncovering the material that, like, the Ripper costume is made out of. Because when the cop fought, like, the Ripper, he ripped off, like, part of her costume, and it's made of silk, which leads him to, like, this clothing store, I believe in, like, in Chinatown or something like that. And so, like, he's, oh yes, I import all silk from, like, my country and everything of Japan. And so it's kind of like, okay, so either this person is Asian or they got their clothes from, like, an Asian person. But it doesn't really, see, the problem with this show is, like, it doesn't really lead you to him going past the costume, other than what he knows it coming from, like, Japan and everything. It's like, you think he would start interrogating people from Japan who's there, because it's, like I said, it's a very diverse show, but he doesn't do that. And so also, my problem with this show is, like, the ending and stuff. It's just, I don't know. It's just, there's one clue that leads you to another, that leads you to another. And it makes sense as to why the Ripper wants revenge, because all the bad stuff the people did to her. But, like, there are certain other things it could have done a little bit better in the detective work, but then it's the ending that really gets me. That's so confusing. And also who the Ripper is. Oh no, I remember she ran a sex slave organization, and Margaret was part of that. And, because of that, she was violated by men. Dr. Malanda, now she's interesting because throughout the show, she's a really good doctor and stuff. But 12 years ago, she helped cover up the body. Basically, like, after Margaret was dead, she altered the crime scene to make it look like an attack or something. And then she, like, basically, I think, experimented on the body and all kind of other stuff. And the way she died was brutal, man. She had these weird pins in her body, and when she tried to raise up her limbs, they would, like, break off, and her arm and one of her legs came off, and then she was electrocuted. And by the morning, she was just turned to ash and everything. It was, like, really gruesome looking, especially when the arm fell off. It was, like, nasty. Now, Basil, he is our main bad guy. He's just a tyrant. He's rich. He's petty. But he grew up poor, and he doesn't want nobody to know that. Margaret knew that because they used to hang when they was younger. She tries to blackmail him for money because she wants to get out of town. And so that was the worst thing she did because, eventually, because she, like, threatened to, like, expose him, stuff like that. So he ended up murdering her and stuff. And of course, that's why, like, the Reaper wants him. Now, he's also in love with Verdi. I think that's how you say her name. And that pisses off the other Bellatoni sisters. Or Bellacelli sisters. But he is, like, madly in love with her. But he is so corrupt that, like, he has Kenneth arrested and frames him for, like, the murder. Well, he doesn't even really frame him. He just basically bought out the police force and, like, said that, Kenneth is incompetent and he's letting these people die and this and that. And so basically he just says, just say he's, like, the Reaper. And so they arrest him. Now, when Kenneth is in, like, prison, he escapes by picking the lock. But when he leaves, he's, like, wobbling, like he's been hurt, beat up and everything by the police force. And when Kenneth leaves, he sees the maid to that of Basil. And he literally sees Basil beat the snot out of his maid while they're in the horse coach and everything. She's on the ground pretending like, oh, she tripped and fell, all this other crap. And he's all like, no, I saw you get beat. And then she's all like, forget what you saw, because if I get kicked out of Basil's home, I'm going to be on the street. So she rather work for a tyrant than to be homeless in the street. And, this is what's so crazy about that and everything else. Is, like I said before, that ending. Now, once Kenneth does, like, his, like, investigation, this and that, he goes to Basil at one point, and Basil's all like, there were tons of people at that party, we took pictures, this and that, and Kenneth is trying to put the finger on somebody at that party and kind of like him. And so Basil goes, not Basil, but Kenneth goes, and he gets the negatives from that night, and he develops the pictures, and he sees a little girl in the picture. And that little girl turns out to be the daughter of Margaret. And she is the Reaper, all grown up. So she's about somewhere in her mid to late 20s, right? And that is none other than Regina. And I'm just kind of like, what? Because Regina looks like around the same age as everybody else in that show, so it really threw me off. But she was the little girl at that party. She is the daughter of Margaret. And just like Margaret, she grew up poor and like into service and stuff, like maid service. And at the party, we see all what happens. She spies and sees her mom being made fun of, being attacked, all this other stuff, beaten, all kind of crap. As a result, she sees her mother get like yelled at and fussed at and stuff like that. When her mother was murdered, a young police officer by the name of Kenneth shows up at the house and says that, like your maid's been like murdered, this and that. We found the body. Does she have any next of kin? And the Bella sister said no. Then they took Regina and threw her on the street all homeless and stuff. Now, here's the crazy thing. The writers and people who make the show, they revealed to us who the killer was the episode before the last. Because, see, the widow fought against Kenneth for the second time. She had her buck knife, and he had his police, like, bat thing, or what you call it. And they just, like, fought outside in the middle of the night. And, she is strong enough to fight a grown man. And it's kind of like, how? But he whacks her on the wrist. And so out of nowhere, in like the second to last episode, for whatever reason, Kenneth and Regina just like make love with each other, right? And there was like no chemistry between those two. There was nothing leading up to it. It just happens. And when he's asleep and she's asleep, the camera pans into her wrist, all bruised up, knowing that she got whacked on the wrist. And so, but this is the craziest thing. See, when we see the Reaper and everything, not only does she knows hand-to-hand like combat skill, she's strong enough to fight a man. But one time she was in the alley trying to run from Kenneth, and there was like crate boxes and a gate, and she was just like hopping on one thing after another and just like climbing over something, like freeforming and everything, or freestyling, or free running, whatever you call it. I'm just like, the only time you ever see somebody do something like that, it's like if they're a superhero, Spider-Man, Power Rangers, or a ninja. Well, see, towards the end, when Basil was about to marry that Verde, the Reaper was like ready to get him and everything, right? Because see, here's the thing. When Kenneth went to like the pastor and everything, to ask who this girl is in the picture, he won't tell. And Kenneth knows something is up. But he basically let it slip that, his father died, and he loved him. He's not about to see another person he loves die as well. And that's when Kenneth realized, oh, wait. The Ripper is like, Regina. So he goes and he confronts Gina and he tells her straight up, you need to turn yourself in because you went and murdered all these people. She said she wanted vengeance because justice is now served because the law did not serve the vengeance because a corrupt man took control of the law. And, Kenneth just keep telling her left and right, you can't do this. And not only that, but one of the Bella sisters is framed because of you and everything. So he goes and sees that sister and tells her, like, look, man, I'll make you that deal, like I told you before. And she said she'd rather sit in jail than to turn against Basil. So when he, after he gets arrested and gets out, he goes home, he sees a note. So he knows that, Regina is going after Basil. Well, Basil shows up at the wedding altar, and there's like a woman dressed in a white wedding dress. But it's not a woman. I thought it was the Reaper. But it's actually a skull, a skeleton, a dead body. I'm assuming it's like Margaret's dead body. And then out comes the Reaper and everything. And so, like, they fight in hand-to-hand combat to the point where it's literally fists being thrown and she's throwing kicks. I'm like, how in the world did she learn, like, martial arts or whatever? Well, there's a small backstory to that and how she got silk from Japan. There was another servant there, an Asian lady who only speaks Japanese. And when Regina got thrown out the house at a young age, the woman went to her and said, life isn't fair. And, you have to be strong because, the world will like eat you up and everything. And so she takes Regina away. So off screen, we are assuming that not only did she teach her like how to fight, how to like scale walls and everything. What the world? But that's where she got like the silk. And it would have been nice to see her train or something like that instead of just having to assume that. And so like, then all of a sudden people start coming out. The pastor comes out. The maid of Basil comes out, and Verde comes out. And they're all there to get justice. And it's like, what the heck? So Kenneth shows up, and he sees all of them. See, basically, the Reaper gouged his eyes out. And then everybody grabbed onto his head and started smushing in as well, gouging his eyes out and shattering like his head or whatever. And it's like, what? And then Kenneth all of a sudden joins in. I'm all like, wait, what the heck is going on? So they all kill the dude, right? And then they all just like walk away. And then it ends. And I'm just thinking to myself, hold up. When were they all involved in this? Were they all involved at the beginning and just pretending not to know nothing? That can't be. And it's like, okay, Regina murdered her husband because he was involved in this crap 12 years ago as well. So it's weird that the writers had her marry her husband, who she hated, who violated her mother, just so she could get close to him and find out about everything else. Like, well, all these other people live and this and that. But she should know where they live because they all live in the same place 12 years later. So not only did she do that, but then she went on this whole elaborate killing spree of getting her revenge. But then all of a sudden, because Basil framed that of the pastor's father, he is in on it. Then Verde, who gets treated badly by her sisters and Basil wants to marry her, she was in on it, but she seemed genuinely happy when she was with him. But then the maid of all people was in on it as well. And I'm just kind of like, when were they all in on this? It literally just happened out of like plot armor. Then all of a sudden, Kenneth joined in. I'm like, no, man. He was a good cop. All the rest of them are like corrupt. He wanted truth and justice and everything. And he was the only person willing to like, arrest his like, lover and everything because she did a bad thing. But he never did arrest her. He was even trying to get one of the other sisters out of prison because she was framed by Verde of all people. And I'm just kind of like, and he just lets all of this go. And I'm just like, this ending sucks, man. Yes, Basil deserved everything that came to him. But, Kenneth was outstanding to the point of wanting to bring a person to justice. And then it just flipped it on his head and all like, all right, just have everybody kill him. And everybody walks away, and even though they're murderers and stuff. And the cop as well. And I'm just kind of like, this is the weirdest ending I've ever seen to this series. Other than when that one last season when that one girl banked her brother. And everything. And I'm just, ugh. But anyway. And it's just kind of like when it comes to this show, It's losing its mojo. The first three seasons were solid, but that fourth and that fifth, man, they're just off centered and everything. It's like they're running out of ideas and just coming up with whatever they can. Because the characters this season were very uninteresting and stuff. They really just didn't do it for me. And it's just like, everything just kept happening so quickly. Which normally happens in this show because it's 8 episodes. So every season is 8. And, they do like the backstories and everything. But, like, I don't know, man. This is the first time where it's just kind of like things just seem to happen because the writers just made it happen. Which is, yes, every episode, every season, because the writers make everything happen. But this is the only time where it just seems like nothing really made a lot of sense. And they just needed to make sense. So they just, okay, this happens because of this, and that happens because of that. And it's just kind of like, I don't know, man. There's something off about this season. That wasn't that spooky. Alright, well, I shall talk to y'all later. Bye.